Welcome back to Sportianity. Today I have a special guest, I guess you could say. It's my younger sister, Randi Lenard, here to share her testimony and what athletic training, what that perspective has to say, and maybe offer coaches and parents and athletes a perspective on the intersection of faith in sports. So, Randy, welcome to Sportianity for the first time. Thanks for joining me for this conversation. I look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this with you.
Yeah, and just so people do know, this isn't the only time that we talk. We actually do enjoy each other, so
True.
yeah,
Kind of
which
like
is good. It's good. It's good stuff. All right, maybe to start out, the people know that you're my sister now, but maybe just give us, the 3 to 5 minute version of your testimony and life story. I won't be starting a stopwatch, but you know, the overview version, if you will.
Sounds good. So I was very fortunate. We grew up in a Christian household. Our parents were very influential in our faith and demonstrated that daily to us the importance of having a walk with Christ and what that looks like in everyday life. And having dad as a coach and mom as a coach's wife, and all of us kids involved in sports and me in dance growing up, um, they made sure that we still knew that that was the most important thing was our faith. So very fortunate to have come to know Christ at a very young age. I was baptized when I was about 7. My dad actually got to baptize me, which was really special. So, had faith from a young age, but I think my faith really grew the most when I went to college. I think that's true for a lot of people, especially those of us who grew up in church. You kind of get out
Yeah.
of the house and it's your decision to make that faith your own, because your parents aren't there, at least in proximity most of the time, and I got involved in an amazing church in Laramie, Wyoming, Snowy Range, E-Free, and they were so much a part of my growth as a believer in my college years. And it was pretty special. I had a lot of friends that went to that church with me. So we had a great community between some of the dancers and the football players and other athletes at UW. So that was really a telling time. There's a lot of influences in college that can be maybe negative. There's a lot of really great
Hmm.
influences too. So just having that community to lean on every day at school and then coming together on Sundays to celebrate and learn and grow together, that was that was really like the turning point where I feel like I was learning how to study the Bible for real and what does this mean? What is my stance on XYZ,
Yeah.
just really making that faith my own and growing closer to the Lord. Um, and so I've been very fortunate that way to have faith from a young age.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. Maybe next, what drew you into athletic training in the first place, and when did you realize that it wasn't just a career path for you, but also a ministry calling, if you will?
Sure. So like I said, I was a dancer my whole life. I danced for 20 years. I started when I was 2 and I did it all the way through college. Went into college knowing I wanted to do something with medicine after, I retired from dancing, because that's not a very long career, even if you make it
Yeah.
professionally. So went in as a pre-med major and a dance science major. And in my intro to kinesiology class, we went and toured different facilities, different jobs that you could have. And in kinesiology and athletic training was one of those. And when we got to talk to the head athletic trainer of football and see what his daily life looked like and the influence he had on the athletes, getting to see them from start to finish of an injury and seeing them daily and getting to know them, I was like, okay, this sounds cool. Asked to volunteer with the football team, ended up being a athletic training aide for 4 years there, and I absolutely fell in love with the profession. So there was a draw there, but I was still dancing at the time, and I had 6 foot surgeries, over the course of high school and college, and around 4 or 5, you start to wonder, like, is this worth it? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing even though it was my first love, it was my passion, and, the mental toll that that takes of, stepping back and watching someone else take your spot and the healing process and all those things. And so I just started to pray about my future and what I should do. And it really took me until that last surgery, and that was kind of my point where I'm like, "Okay, God, this is clearly not what you have for me. So show me what you have for me." And, I was able to find an amazing athletic training program to go to for my master's. Very fortunate to go to a Christian school, so having that influence, and that perspective on athletic training, was very unique to Baylor's program, and so I'm very grateful for that. But it was really in that time of struggle of identity and if I'm not dancing, what am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing?
Hmm.
Because, I was all praising his name with dancing forever, and then it's like, "Okay, well, what do I do if I can't do that?" And so, I just felt at peace with my decision of going into athletic training and being able to be there for the athletes that feel those emotions, that go through injury and the mental and physical toll that it takes,
Hmm.
athlete and their peers and, their coaches or their instructors, whatever it may be. So that's kind of how I ended up falling in love with athletic training and making it into my career and my ministry as best I can.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Maybe kind of one more intro question, perhaps. If you look back on your time so far in sports medicine, is there a specific story or interaction with a player or coach that you would say captures why you do what you do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, to be honest. 'Cause like I said, we see these guys every day, especially working in football. I mean, you're with your football team more than you are with your family or your friends. So there's a lot of those, but the first one that comes to mind when you say that is I had an athlete who got hurt in the middle of a game, seemed like a pretty serious injury, one that required him to go into the locker room. That's never a great sign in the
Hmm.
middle of the game. And I was the one who was told to go stay with him. And I had a very good relationship with this athlete. We had, built strong rapport. I knew about his family, I've met his mom, all the things. And so he was just sitting there with his head in his hands. And I just put my hand on him and I was like, "Do you want me to pray with you?" And he said yes through tears. And we prayed together in the locker room that whatever the outcome may be, that he would be able to use it for God's glory. And this kid is a believer. And I remember a few days later, we got imaging, all the things, and turned out to not be as severe as we thought. And he came up to me and he goes, "Randall, you remember when we prayed for this?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I do." So it's moments like that that are very special and just make you think about the little things that make such a huge impact. And even if it had been, a worse outcome, which thank God it wasn't, I
Hmm.
believe that that still would have been impactful for both of
Yeah.
us, to walk through because I have seen it on the other side as well. Um, as far as coaches go, I've been very blessed to work under some very strong Christian men um, in this field, which sometimes can seem rare. Uh,
Yeah.
but, the Texans had a great group of strong believers that rallied around each other. And
Hmm.
just, the head coach walking through the hallway saying, "Hey, praying for you and your family," when we were in a very dark time, when we
Hmm.
lost dad or when we were walking through his cancer journey. That means so much because I knew that those coaches meant it, that they were
Hmm.
and likewise, if I could pray for them in some way, I would, even if that's just for them to be strong leaders to the people that they're over, that they're in charge of. Um,
Yeah.
so just things like that that are just little It's just God's echo, everywhere.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times, athletic training puts you, right in that intersection of, physical injury, which also makes people emotionally vulnerable, right? Because as an athlete, it's not like other professions where, in a lot of cases, you are the instrument. It's like, hey, if you wreck some piece of heavy equipment, it's like, hey, hopefully you're okay. But like, I mean, you are the tool. Like your body is the money maker. So it makes it, especially emotional. I think, and having a faith that can help people be able to walk through that because you actually, care about them as human beings, right? And you can, uh, they're hopefully able to point them to the reality that they should be playing, from their identity in Christ if they're a believer and not, to earn, his favor or approval and things like that. But we can all, fall into performance driven aspects of our faith. And, you know, uh, it can be kind of fast paced a lot of times in, the training room, high stress, have kind of injuries, emotional stuff. How does an athletic trainer step into all of that chaos and maintain and try to keep, a calm presence with all of, those things going around? I mean, how do coaches and athletes rely on you in those ways to help keep the environment the most productive that it can be? Because I don't think people think about that all the time. But you're in those most stressful emotional places before, after games, during injuries, all of those type of things.
Yeah, chaos is definitely a good way to frame that. And it's sometimes it's great chaos, sometimes it's scary chaos. But really good advice I got from one of my mentors is just do the next right thing. Because if you get too far ahead of yourself, don't get me wrong, I'm a planner. I want to have a plan. I'm very type A, but some things you can't control. So you have to just embrace the chaos and just do the next right thing. Because if you do the next right
Hmm.
thing, then you can do the next right thing. And you may mess up and ultimately that happens, but just trying to maintain that sense of I can control the things that I can control right now and the rest of it's in God's hands. And just that perspective, but then also just embracing the chaos is fun. You know,
Hmm.
it's ever changing. That's one of the things I love about being in sports medicine is no day is the same. Nothing walks in my facility is the same every day, from
Hmm.
athletes and coaches to injuries, to just at like a daily basis or conversations that come up. So I think just embracing the chaos, and most of the time you've probably been through a situation like this. And if you haven't, someone above you has. So reaching out to those mentors, even if it's not necessarily in your field, like I've asked coaches for advice. I go talk to the strength coaches a ton and be like, hey, I need advice in this area. What are you thinking? What have you seen
Hmm.
work? How do I build rapport with this athlete that my techniques aren't working? So really leaning on each other and just looking to do the next right thing.
Yeah. No, that's really good. It kind of tied to that. Serving athletes requires a deep level of trust, right? And so, what's maybe one practical way, one or two, to build like genuine, meaningful relationships with players who might naturally be guarded or skeptical? Because I think this is helpful not just for, athletic trainers, somebody who's trying to, hey, trust me with your rehab, trust me with, taping your ankles, whatever it is. But but also, that you might want to say to, coaches, too, that would be helpful when it just comes to building, a meaningful relationship with their players.
Yeah. I think that's really important because a lot of these guys don't come in trusting the sports med staff or the coaches, especially in my setting in collegiate and having worked in professional. These guys are bouncing from team to team a lot. And so it's hard to build a connection in 6 months before they transfer,
Hmm.
but it can be done. And obviously, if you have more time than that, it's a lot easier. But I think the biggest part for me is listen to what they're saying. when you ask them something, and listen for maybe what they're not saying when you ask a question, and then try to remember. The biggest thing I think when I'm getting to know a guy who first comes in my building, I wanna know, who are you outside of football? How many siblings do you have?
Mhm.
Like, are you close with your parents? Maybe a sensitive subject, that's something that you have to approach in a genuine and caring way, but get to know them. What do they like to do? A lot of my guys have horses, or they go fishing, or they like to ride ATVs, or some of my guys are into art. Figure that out and try to remember one thing that they told you. So then the next time you have a conversation, you can be like, "Hey, how'd your little brother's football game go?" Or like,
Yeah.
"Hey, have you made any new art recently?" Or, "Hey, like, what TV shows are you watching?" Just
Mhm.
little things like that, that when you start to remember what they say and they realize that you're actually listening to them, they can trust you with the little things, they can trust you with the big things. And I think in sports, we love talking about sports. We love talking about our team, other teams,
Mhm.
different sports, even pickup games, but it's not always going to be geared towards sports, and it shouldn't be, because, it's person over player always. And building those relationships just really takes that extra step of, let me get to know who you are outside of football, or
Mhm.
outside of soccer, or whatever sport that you work with. Like, let me get to know you. Let me get to know how your family is, because maybe there's something that I can fill in for that you're missing, or
Yeah.
some way that I can support you because your family's going through a dark time. And I think that's just the biggest thing for me, is listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good because in treating, like you said, treating, the player, themselves, not just interested in what they can do, for you or for the team, but taking a, genuine interest. And I think it goes a long way. Like anybody that has, kids or multiple kids, they have there's different ways that they're motivated to do things. There's different ways that they, feel, appreciated and cared for. And it doesn't matter like who you are, if you want to, pretend like you have no emotions or you're a super emotional person. Like everybody's motivated by different things. Like everybody appreciates, different things. And when you feel kind of known and seen, and some people need that more than others, you're motivated to actually, like perform, to trust people, to, actually want to enter into a deeper, meaningful relationship. So I think that's really helpful.
For sure. And I think that helps, once you get to know them, you get to know how they want to be coached. Like,
Hmm.
I don't have the coach title, but I do coaching in my rehab and, my return to play sessions. Like, I am coaching the guys up. And there's some guys who you gotta light a fire under them, to get
Yeah.
them going. You're gonna have to yell at them. You're gonna have to be hard on them. They may want to talk smack with you, and that motivates them. And then there's other guys who that's gonna completely shut them down. And you need to be supportive and be like, "Hey, you were doing this really well. Let's focus on this." I think by building that relationship, you can get to know how somebody wants to be coached, and
Hmm.
also know that that may change depending on their circumstance too. If they love to be coached really hard before injury and now they're coming back, that may feel a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes for coaches to realize like you're not, compromising like who you are, like team standards, by actually, treating people as individuals, and sometimes there's going to be some general like statements, expectations, things that way. But also, I think the best coaches really know their players well at a personal level, and you always be closer with some than others. You're in a particular position group or side of the ball or whatever that ends up being. But that's really good. I do want to switch to coaches for a minute because they carry a lot of pressure, to win, to manage a program, some of them to be the face of the program and, those type of things. And so, how do you view your role in serving and supporting coaches? Maybe that's something that people don't generally think about an athletic trainer doing, uh, besides maybe being assigned to make sure they don't have a heart attack during the game and they get water, or something like that, or maybe sometimes function as the get back coach on the sideline or whatever. But um, maybe how do you see yourself acting as also a source of encouragement, to coaches? What's your role look like on the sideline?
Sure, yeah. I think that's something that, like you said, a lot of people don't think about, but the support staff is called the support staff for a reason, right? And our job is to make the coach's job easier in whatever way we can. And, like you said, a lot of times that is just by doing tasks that you're assigned. But I think it's important just as much of building a relationship with your athletes that it is to build a relationship with your coach, because
Hmm.
ultimately, if your coach trusts you, your athletes are going to trust you more. And so building that trust is really important in that relationship. And, I try to just have conversations with the coaches when I can, obviously in an appropriate time. But just like getting to know them, asking them about their kids, talking to them about their weekend, or hey coach, good to see you. How was your July break? Where'd you go?
Yeah.
Do anything fun? Getting to know them, getting to know them outside of football. Um, and just being there if they need anything, even if it's something little. Um, I've also had coaches come to me and ask me about, hey, what do you think about this kid? What's your impression of them? Like, how do we get him to perform to his highest potential? Because we see them a lot outside of football, and we hear their conversations. We probably know a little bit more insight into certain areas of the athlete's life, and so being able to have those conversations with the coaches, like, "Hey, actually, yeah, this kid is dealing with a family issue right now,"
Hmm.
or, he just needs to be heard. He needs to feel like he is important, and like you said, the standard's a standard. We don't change the standard, but the standard can be enforced in different ways or reminded in different ways, and still have you may still have the same punishment, the same, you know, got 50 up downs, so
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
approach to the conversation can be different. Um, and I think so just really trying to have those conversations off field, on field, whenever it is, and building that trust. And if you have conflict with a coach, this has happened before, game days are heated, stuff gets
Hmm.
crazy on the sideline, and maybe a coach didn't hear you say, "Hey, so and so is out. You don't have him for special teams." That
Hmm.
didn't get communicated. There was crossfire, whatever it is. Going back and saying, "Hey, coach, I'm sorry that that was not effectively communicated.
Yeah.
What is a better way that we can communicate to build that relationship?" And
Hmm.
so, just figuring out those little things. I think also for me, being a female in football, I have tried to get to know the coaches' wives as well when they're around. They're not always around, but for a lot of our community events, they are. Um,
Hmm.
and recruiting, I got to know some of the coaches' wives here. And mom, our mom was a coach's wife growing up. She did that for 30 years. And the strength that you have to support your husband through that. Football season's long, and
Hmm.
football season is all year long when you're a coach
Yeah.
and when you're a coach's wife, and so, just letting them know, "Hey, I'm here to support you too." I may have coaches' wives that come in sometimes for, they need something from me medically,
Yeah.
and that's awesome, but sometimes it's just those conversations of, "Hey, I'm really proud of the way that you support your husband through this." And,
Hmm.
you're killing it taking care of all the kids, getting them to soccer, getting them to football, getting to whatever.
Yeah.
Um, because I think that's important too. Just seeing that relationship and that dynamic, it can make or break a coach, whether you have that support or not. And so supporting your wives as coaches, letting them know that you appreciate them holding down the fort while you're at football, and being a support to you. And, if there's coaches' wives listening, like, you are their rock during football season. And so that
Hmm.
doesn't go unnoticed from my perspective, especially seeing how gracefully mom did that our whole life and how involved
Yeah.
she was and how much she loved the kids, her and dad, and having, if a kid needed a place to stay, we had room. We always had an extra
Hmm.
room, like, for
Yeah.
whatever reason, God always provided that. for our parents to be able to use those gifts and be able to share Christ's love, just be the hands
Yeah.
and feet, that's a big part of the coach's relationship, so
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And, kind of related, sticking with coaches here, from your perspective, maybe what are some typical blind spots that you've seen coaches exhibit? We don't have to call out anybody in particular, but there's maybe just like a couple key insights or considerations that you believe coaches should be more mindful of that athletic trainers often observe, firsthand, and because there can be, we all have blind spots, we all have different perspectives on things, but if what's something maybe that we haven't mentioned yet that would be helpful for coaches from your perspective of what's I mean, we mentioned a couple of things, kind of the emotional, maybe mental health side of an athlete through injury, or how are they motivated, those type of things I think fall in here sometimes for some coaches. But is there anything that you would add to that would be helpful to coaches from your perspective?
yeah, I know we already touched this a little bit, but I really do think the biggest one is the mental component. Mental toughness and emotional response to an injury are not always correlated. You can have the most mentally tough kid you've ever seen, and as soon as they become injured, there's just that emotion. Everything they've worked for, they feel like they've lost.
Hmm.
And they, like you said, if their identity is in themselves as an athlete and not in who they are in Christ, that can become a crisis very quickly. And so I think recognizing that and being that support of, hey, this is bigger than football, or this is bigger than you as an athlete. How
Hmm.
can how can you use this to draw nearer to our Savior? What's the purpose that he may have allowed this to happen? So I think that one really is a big one for me. And then I think also you may not know why an athlete is acting a certain way. If they have a flip in personality or just the way they go about their day to day. Maybe it's not that they're trying to have an attitude with your talk back. Obviously, standard's the standard. That shouldn't happen, period. And that can be addressed. But why? Why did they flip out? Why did they miss weights? Why did they throw their helmet at practice? Again, all things that they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
But during or after the discipline, look and ask why. Because a lot of the time it may not be coming from the same place you think it is.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that is one. And then just coaches, support your support staff. We put in a lot of hours. Y'all put in a lot of hours. We're in the grind together. Um, Athletic training, strength and conditioning, nutrition, like all of those are often very thankless jobs. And
Hmm.
so even just like a fist bump and a hey, thanks for being here today, that goes a long way. And I don't need it. I love my job. You don't have to tell me I'm doing a good job, but a thank you goes a long way.
Yeah.
Or, I have thank you cards from some coaches I've worked with that I have saved because that meant a handwritten note meant the world to me. It's just the little things like
Hmm.
that, just lifting each other up as a whole staff. I think sometimes we get caught up in just being like, oh, you're here to do your job.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
here, I get to do my job today, and that is great, but I'm happy you're here with me.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Maybe as we're kind of coming to the close of our conversation here, athletic trainers, they work a lot of long hours, just like coaches, just like the athletes, do early mornings, late nights, a lot of weekends, a lot of travel, especially in season. How do you keep your own spiritual tank full so you're not trying to serve others out of, emptiness, or, encourage out of your own, wisdom, or, but you're really trying to, live out the Christian faith in your life, even during, these chaotic seasons? what, encouragement or advice would you give to athletic trainers of the future, all right, or wanting to go into the profession? Um, Maybe they don't have a ton of experience and, they're kind of hit in the face with just the requirements of what you actually have to do every day. How do you stay, rooted in Christ, connected to the church, even, through a wild schedule?
Yeah. It's hard. It's very hard. And there's days where your cup is completely empty and you just have to really dig into that faith of why you're there. Um, so I think it's definitely difficult to try to get to a traditional church service when you work in sports because your weekends are consumed with sports a lot of the time, especially football season or during like higher level athletics. A lot of the time, you're working on Sundays. And so for me, when I wasn't able to go to, your traditional brick and mortar church service, it's simple things, really little things. Like I have the Bible app on my phone and I have the widget on the front of my screen that has the daily verse. So I'm reading
Hmm.
that daily verse at the minimum. I try to read at least a chapter that takes you 5 minutes of, a book in the Bible that you're reading. I'm gonna be completely honest, that doesn't always happen, but I try to do that.
Yeah.
Listening to podcasts, a lot of the time when you're doing busy work, you're cleaning coolers or you're, doing admin tasks, whatever it is, throw in a podcast that is, rooted in theology or listen to a sermon from your home church or another church, a good Bible preaching church. Most of those are free on streaming platforms, and there's a lot of churches that have them just on their websites. You don't even have to have a podcast platform to listen to them, so that you're
Hmm.
still getting fed. It may not have the community aspect, which is very important. That's why we're supposed to be in church and in community with other Christians, but during season, I'm relying on the capital C church, like,
Hmm.
we are doing this together, we're uplifting each other where we can, "Hey, man, how can I pray for you?" Or, "I listened to this really good sermon, let me send you the notes."
Hmm.
Just little things like that where, like, I've even had athletes that, when they ask me about my weekend, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I did XYZ, went to church on Sunday, blah, blah," blah. Then prompts the question of, "Oh, how was church? Where do you go to church?" And then we can open up
Hmm.
that conversation. So then you're getting that Christian community still. It just may look a little bit different. One of my mentors, he Mondays are hard in football. It's typically your injury check day and your like review practice or game review practice. So
Hmm.
you're doing corrections. It's just a rough day. Um,
Yeah.
so he listens to worship music on Mondays. Like that's his thing, and so I've started to adopt that as well, and just getting into a different mindset, just starting the week off, as much as you can in the Word, in worship, in prayer, just making it a part of your everyday life. Like, I pray for my athletes on my way into the facility. I pray that I would be a light in that space and that God would use me that day. And so I think it's just the little things. It can feel very daunting to try to, you know, stay connected during season,
Yeah.
especially, but it's really just the intentionality and the finding little ways that you can just do life with Christ and other believers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Any maybe finally here, anything that I didn't ask you that I should have, or that you would like to, share with our listeners as a word of encouragement to coaches and athletes and coaches' wives might be listening.
Pray. That's my biggest thing. And that's been something that I've really just it's been on my heart and in my personal journey over the past few years, really. Um, pray about everything, pray all the time. Like, you don't have to be in your quiet place with your eyes closed and your hands open or your
Hmm.
hands folded. that's doesn't have to be how your prayer is. That's great when you can set aside that quiet time and go away and pray, but you can pray in your car while you're driving. You can pray in your head over an athlete who is struggling, or, you know, I pray before every practice. I pray before every game that my athletes would be safe and that the skills would be brought back to my remembrance, that he would allow me to do what is allowing me to do and do it well. And, I think it can be intimidating to try to be outspoken in your faith in the workplace.
Hmm.
I've been blessed to be in a lot of situations where people are very outspoken about their faith, and so it's not an awkward thing to do, but just just the little things. Like, I ask my guys, "Hey, can I pray for you?" I've never had anybody say no, but the day that they do, that's great. You know what I'm gonna do? As soon as I walk away, I'm gonna pray for 'em in my head anyway.
Yeah.
But they may allow that, or if your
Hmm.
employer doesn't allow you to do that, you can be praying for your athletes and praying for your coaches, for
Hmm.
your coworkers, for all of it. I think prayer is our, like, direct line,
Hmm.
and I think often we underutilize it, and it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And so that would be my biggest thing is pray. Pray for strength, pray for energy and endurance, especially going into fall camp. I know that those
Yeah.
are we start Sunday, so,
Yeah.
those are things I pray for, but just just pray.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's a great place to land, because the way that God's designed prayers, that it's the means by which he accomplishes his purposes for his people, and in our world, right? That if he's ordained that we pray so that things actually happen. And so we get to be involved in that, and to be part of the things that he's doing in people's lives, and to be able to even, just basically simply call on him for help and encouragement, and to do that for others. And so I think it's a great place to land our conversation and leave people as they start to walk into the fall sports season. So Randy, thanks for joining me for this conversation. I pray it's helpful and encouraging to those that listen to it later on. So appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
They turn away.